Hello and welcome to T Money Talks. In this week's episode, T Money's gonna talk about being your own biggest fan. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Hello, and welcome again. Welcome back. Welcome if it's your first time. Either way, hello. This is T Money Talks. A new week, a new episode, a new thing for me to talk about, a new thing for me to discover, and to maybe help you discover or try to maybe work on some things yourself. Anyway, so before I started recording this podcast, I had a whole lot of technical difficulties. Like, I straight up recorded about 6 minutes of this podcast, erased it because I did not like what I was saying. And that's because I was still letting that negative energy of the the technical difficulties I had affect me and the podcast. And I just did not like the vibes and the energy that I was giving in the podcast. It all felt very forced and unnatural. And if there's one thing that I want with T Money Talks is I want everything to happen organically. I want it to happen naturally. I don't want anything to ever feel forced. I don't want you to feel like I'm doing this podcast because I need money or because I need something out of it. I guess I do need something out of it, but not like from other people, from me myself, in the sense of what I get out of this podcast is talking about myself, talking about who I am, discovering about who I am. The whole point of T Money Talks, so which is why, again, I say I want it all to be natural. I want it to feel natural. I don't want anything to feel forced or like I'm putting on an act or like, oh, ha ha ha, this is not really who I am, because this is genuinely who I am. I feel like this podcast with T Money Talks, like, this is as close as to who I truly am as anyone will ever get, I feel like, because if I were to meet you out on the streets as a complete stranger, I don't know. Let's start again. If I were to meet you, or if you were to meet me, like, out on the streets randomly, like completely unaware, like we just bumped into each other, or you thought I was approachable and like, hey, I want to be their friend, I would totally be extremely shy and not say much because that's who I am. I keep to myself. I'm not very out there, which is funny because I'm a musician and a TikTok creator. It makes no sense. I'm very much an introvert. So for me to do all these extroverted things is really funny. But here's the thing. I feel like introverts are the best people to do extroverted things because they're so quiet, and we have all like this energy and all this really cool creative things that we want to do inside of us, but we don't know how to do it. And so when we finally have the opportunity to do something like the podcast or a play or music, that's our time to let out, to break out of our shells and show the world that us introverts can make it just as good as an extrovert, So yes, I'm very much a closed, shy, introverted person when you first meet me. However, of course, as I get to know you and I grow more comfortable, you get the crazy, the wild side of T Money, the podcast where I'm talking weird, I'm doing accents, I'm just being me. So, which is why I say this podcast is as close to the real T Money as you're going to get. I am trying to be as authentic, as truth, as honest as I can be in this podcast, which is why I want to talk about being your own biggest fan. And that is also why I erased the first 6 minutes I recorded of this podcast, because it was just too much negativity for me. Of course, those technical difficulties were horrible. They made me really upset. It set me back an hour before I could even start recording. But in the end, everything is working again. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I am grateful that it is working again because I really didn't want to record on my desktop. I prefer to record the podcast on my laptop unless I have a guest, This way I could be mobile, move around. If I wanted to go outside and do it on the hammock, I could go outside and do it on the hammock with my laptop. With a desktop, not so much. I mean, you can, but it'd be way too much work. But yeah, so this week I'm going to be talking about being your own biggest fan. And I'm not going to be this isn't going to be like some inspirational or like some how-to guide on how to be your own biggest fan. This is really just going to be me talking about how I am my own biggest fan, how T Money's number one fan is T Money. The number one listener of T Money Talks is T Money. I genuinely listen to my own podcast. And that's not to help get it so that like I get more views or anything like that. Not at all. The reason why I listen to my podcast is because sorry, I'm my hands are all over the place. I just have so much. I don't know. Sorry. I'm just kind of excited, a little bit jittered up, It's who we're vibing. It's part of the vibe. I'm excited. I think that's what it is. I'm just really excited to talk about how obsessed I am with myself. And not in a narcissistic way. Not at all in a narcissistic way. I do listen to T Money Talks after I release it. Not the same day, usually a couple days later, sometimes maybe even a week. I listen to T Money Talks on my own outside of editing and releasing it because T Money Talks is not only for other people, but it's also for myself. I do these podcasts because a lot of the time I will get channeled messages or I'll say things, I'll discover new things about me that I didn't know. And sometimes I'll say these really good healing things or these really powerful messages that sometimes are really directed for me, are meant for me to hear again, as well as my listeners. So the reason why I listen to this podcast again is so if I forget something, if I forget to love myself, if I forget to take care of myself, if I forget what it was like to learn how to walk, I could go back and listen to the podcast and I could remind myself, hey, you're doing your best. Hey, it's okay that you're not feeling okay. Or you know what? You are doing amazing. This podcast is also for T Money, which is why T Money is the number one fan of T Money Talks. And the thing is, I'm not only my biggest fan for T Money Talks, I'm my biggest fan for everything I do. Because yes, of course, I feel like your family is just gonna always enjoy the things that you do, your friends as well, because they're your friends, they're your family, they love you, they care for you, they want you to do great, they want you to be the best you can be. But at the same time, you gotta remember that the other people in the world may not find you talented, they may not enjoy the music or the content or the videos you make, and that's okay. Because certain things aren't meant for everyone. Your content isn't. My content, I don't think I'm biased because I think my content is designed for everyone. But that's just because I'm trying to help heal the whole world, Well, not the entire world, just people who feel that they are ready and open to the art of self-discovery, But who knows? We're kind of wilds now here. But yeah, I'm my biggest fan for everything I do. For my music, I listen to my own music by myself. I was going to say on my own. Well, I guess that in a sense that works the same too. Yeah. Sorry, my brain is just really all over the place. I'm also hot. I should probably not be wearing PJ pants because I'm starting to sweat a lot. So that probably too also adds into my whole craziness. So it's very hot in my room, and my mom also washed the carpet in here too, so maybe the because it's still just the slightest bit damp, maybe it's making it a little humid in my room and I didn't realize it, and because I had the technical difficulties and that made me angry, and then the heat makes me angry as well, does not go well. So I do have the fan on, but it's not really hitting me the way I want it to be. So I'm kind of, I do apologize for being all over the place. All right, I changed my pants. I am now in shorts. I moved the fan just a little bit closer, and now I do feel a little bit more relaxed. I mean, to be honest, I feel a lot of chaotic energy still. I don't know if that's from the frustration of the technical difficulties or from the heat, but I will just sage my whole room after this podcast is done because honestly, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if the universe doesn't want me to talk about being my own biggest fan or if there's genuinely just something in the air. Well, I mean, there is the new moon in Scorpio today and tomorrow. Well, at least the time of me recording this podcast. So that could be it. Very much could be it. Or it could just be me. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But anyways, yes, let me talk more about being your own biggest fan before anything else happens or because I don't know what's happening. I don't. I know what I wanted to talk about for this podcast. I was ready. I'm excited. Like, I have thought about this topic for quite some time because I want to know, I want people to understand how much I support myself because supporting yourself is so important when you're a creator, when you're trying to do something, when you're trying to make music, when you're doing anything because no, not everyone is going to love what you do. Not everyone's going to like what you do. Not everyone will support what you do. Yes, you'll have your family and your friends who will support you, but it's honestly really important to be your own biggest fan. Because when you do get like the hate or the criticism, it's important to still have that solid, grounded foundation in yourself that you know that, hey, even though this guy told me that I'm a terrible writer or they tell me that I'm not funny at all, I don't care. It doesn't bother me because I know I'm funny. I'm a great writer. I'm a great musician. I have great content. I support myself. I'm my own biggest fan. And so the comments don't hurt. They don't mean much. They don't have the pain or whatever the negativity that they're trying to put because I am so sure of myself because I support myself so much. I am so sorry. I was like, I don't know. I'm telling you, I don't know what's happening. It's just very chaotic. I feel like this podcast is going to be very wild, like kind of almost scatterbrained. And I do apologize because I'm genuinely trying to tell you about how I support myself, but it just seems like I can't and I don't understand. I don't understand. So I feel like this is a little bit I don't even want I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say as to what's going on. I am sorry. But anyways, I'm just going to continue talking about how I am my own biggest fan, and I think after I'm just gonna kind of let flow what needs to flow because at this point in the show, I feel like something is trying to be said to me. I'm about to discover something great, something good is gonna happen out of this chaos because something always good happens. We always discover something new about me. But yes, so I listen to this podcast on my own, by myself, with no one else around me. Because I do the podcast for myself. I love that sometimes when I'm feeling low or I feel like I need to be comforted, I could comfort myself by listening to this podcast. I could have something to remind me of who I am, to remind me of the power, to remind me that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. And that's what a part of being my own biggest fan is about because actually, I'm not even sure where I was going to go with that, to be honest. I just know I support myself in everything that I do. I listen to my music. I watch my TikToks. I listen to my podcast because if no one else is, I'm going to. And honestly, that's what matters. Me loving what I do, loving the content I'm creating, loving what I'm putting out on the interwebs for everyone to hear, for everyone to see, whatever it may be. I love everything I do. I am my own biggest fan, and I don't know, guys. I know I'm trying to talk about being my own biggest fan, but I don't, maybe I'm not supposed to talk about it. Maybe that's all I have to say about it is that I listen to my own things. Because I do support my own self, you know, because no one else is going to support me if I don't support myself. So I took another break before I got back into talking about being your own biggest fan because honestly, yes, this is a topic that I have wanted to talk about for quite some time because it is very important and I love that I support myself and I am my own biggest fan. However, I feel like that is the extent of what I have to say about being your own biggest fan. And yes, I thought I had this idea of having a whole 40-minute spiel about being my own biggest fan, but I don't, and that's okay. I mean, yeah, I guess in a sense, yes, self love and being your own biggest fan do they. If you were to do it like is it a diagram? I can't remember what the one is when you do like the whole two circles, and then you have the circles that meet in the middle, and then like in the middle is what they have in common. I don't remember what those are because I haven't done one in so long. Anyways, but yes, if we weren't to envision self love and self being your own biggest fan into like two different bubbles with like what they have in common in the middle, what they have in common is the fact that you support yourself, that you have the confidence in yourself, that you know what you're putting out there is of the best thing that you can do, and you love it no matter what anyone else may say about it. And yes, of course, if you're doing something like that space for your career, like that being acting or music or videos, yes, you always want to put out the best thing that you can do, because that's how I am with my music. When it comes to my music, I spend especially this EP I've been working on for about 5 years. Why? Because I want my music to be the best it can be. So until I have what I want, until it sounds amazing to me, I don't want to put it out there, because if I'm not my biggest fan of my work, then there's no point in putting it out there. There's no point, because then how am I going to support something that I don't even that I don't even full-heartedly support myself? Why am I going to do that? And I feel like that's why it's been so hard trying to do this podcast, is because the whole idea of being your own biggest fan just is you support yourself, and that's what I do. And I want to, I guess in a sense, I'm trying to express more or help others understand the importance of being your own biggest fan, because I know a lot of people are their own biggest critics. And yes, it's important to have criticism on yourself and to understand where your strengths and where your weaknesses lie, but you have to also remember that it's good to have this like, I guess in a sense, humbleness in yourself, but you also have to have a little bit of narcissism in yourself when it comes to your work as well, because if you're not going to support it, if you're not loving what you're doing, how was someone else going to love what you're putting out there? Which is why I love that Tea Money Talks all happens organically. It's not something that I'm forcing. And honestly, I feel like the beginning of this podcast may have sounded a little forced. It wasn't as natural as I had liked it, but then I realized it, which is why now I'm talking about this whole realization that I wasn't enjoying what I was saying on this podcast. I didn't really know what to say, so I was kind of genuinely forcing these ideas of being your own biggest fan, trying to make up these scenarios, or trying to really digest how I could explain how I am my own biggest fan. But the only way I could explain it is by me listening and full-heartedly loving what I do. And to me, that's what it is about being your own biggest fan, is just wholeheartedly loving what you put out there, loving the videos, loving the music, loving the podcasts, loving the paintings, the photography, anything that it may be that you love, that you want others to see and judge and be inspired by. You have to be the biggest fan on it. You have to be your own biggest fan. But you have to remember, being your own biggest critic is sometimes not the best thing to do, because yes, I understand completely. I want everything to be perfect. I want my track to be the most fire, awesome thing that the world has ever heard. But you have to remember that in being your own critic, you're never fully going to love what you do if you're constantly pushing yourself down. If you're like, oh, but I can make it better. Oh, but I can make it better. Oh, but I can make it better. Oh, or if I just did that, Yes, and sure, of course, sometimes you can make it better. But ultimately, you have to remember, you have to stop, take a deep breath, look at what you're doing, and then ask yourself, do I love this wholeheartedly? Does this make me happy? And if it does, then stop listening to that part in your head that's telling you, oh, you can make it better, oh, or you're bad at this, or you're bad at that. You don't listen to that. Just remember, if you're your own biggest fan, that thought in your head, the big being your own critic, that'll slowly start to fade away, or the volume will lower down, or the criticisms will start to decrease, where instead of it being real hard negative criticism, it turns into really good critiques, improvements. You then see different ways you can improve your work. You look at it from different angles. And I feel like the only way you can do that is by supporting yourself, being your own biggest fan, because a part of me in listening to this podcast over again not only helps remind me what I need to know about myself, but it also allows me to hear ways I can improve what I'm doing with this podcast, or it helps me improve the way I can make my next track of music, you know? Sorry, I was getting a little out of breath there. Felt really inspired there for a second, which is why I feel like we needed that chaos in the beginning of the podcast. You know, we needed that excitement and kind of that erratic energy that I had going on, because then we wouldn't have gotten to this. Because then I wouldn't have taken the time to sit down with myself and be like, hey, T-Money, you're forcing it right now. I know you want to tell these people about how much you love to support yourself and how much you're your own biggest fan, but you gotta step back and see that it's not happening organically. It's not happening the way you are. You need to just step back and be okay and just let things happen the way they happen. And honestly, when I do finally get out of my own head, when I stop trying to be better than someone else, when I stop trying to outshine someone else and just do what I know, when I just let things come to me, then it's just so much better. It's so much more organic. It feels so authentic, what I'm saying. It feels like it's genuinely coming from within, because it is coming from within, because it is actually happening. Why? Because I stopped letting myself prevent me from being preventing me from going even further in where I could with my journey, with this podcast, with everything. And something that I learned in one of my acting classes was this thing called viewpoints. And viewpoints, it's long story short, like the whole summarized, the way I interpret it is viewpoints is about turning your brain, like your left brain off, and just letting the right brain take over. Put your brain on cruise control and you just vibe. You literally just vibe. And whatever happens, and this is a really good thing I like to do with my music, is because especially when I'm writing a song, is when I write a song, sometimes I can get too much in my head and I start thinking too much about what I want to do or where I want to go with it or what I'm trying to say. When I stop and I just vibe, then suddenly everything starts flowing. Everything starts coming out, because it happened naturally, because I was like, no more of this. I'm trying to be the best. I'm trying to be better than everyone. I'm trying to do what I can. And just like, all right, what's going to happen happens. We're going to ride the wave. We're going to ride this vibe, and we're just going to go. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is truly the lesson of today's podcast. It's just that I learned that I am 100% my own biggest fan. And as much as I would have loved to tell you guys exactly how to be your own biggest fan, I didn't want to force anything that I couldn't. Again, I got lost. I feel like I was trying to force something about being your own biggest fan. Point blank example. I just have to, I don't know why I'm in my head so much this podcast episode, and I do apologize, but I do hope even through this chaos, this like chaotic energy that I have right now, you still in some way can understand what I mean about being your own biggest fan, because at this point I'm a little lost. At least lost in topic, you know, because I feel like my brain has just been all over the place, that I'm forgetting what I have been saying, and this is really bad. This is kind of bad, you know. Ouch. Sorry. Oh, sorry. I like kind of poked my leg there for a second, unintentional. Anyways, yes, so I feel like this podcast is going to be kind of chaotic. It's kind of going to be all over the place, and I do apologize, but I'm trying my best. We're all out here trying our best. We're loving ourselves. We're doing the best we can. I'm my own biggest fan. I'm doing self love, self growth, self discovery, all that jazz, you know? This is about the third break I had in the podcast, and I'm now realizing that whenever I do record the podcast, it's always like a straight, like full on record. The only time I do have a break or a pause in the recording is if I have a technical difficulty, if something happens with the program, or if I have to, like, I had to change into shorts because it was too hot. If anything that affects the podcast happens, that's the only time I will pause, stop talking, and then fix whatever it is that needs to be fixed, and then go back into the groove of it, because once I'm on a roll, I just don't stop. And I feel like this podcast, it's been a little chaotic. You know, I've restarted this podcast episode twice. I've stopped and paused throughout the whole show. I mean, you won't be able to tell, of course, because I'm just so fabulous with my editing. But I think I'm finally discovering or learning or remembering why I wanted to talk about being your own biggest fan, because being your own biggest fan also doesn't have to just be about supporting everything that you do. It doesn't have to just be about loving the content that you create, loving what you put out for others to see. It also has to do about being your own biggest fan, like for who you are, like as an individual, like being proud that I got out of bed today, being proud that you brushed your teeth, being proud that you ate, being proud that you got up and did something with your day. That's also a part of being your own biggest fan, and that's where being your own biggest fan and self-love have that they fit into the bubble, and that's the thing that have their similarities. You know, is that being your own biggest fan can be implemented into so many other things, not just the things that you're trying to create, not just things that are part of your career, but a part of your everyday life. And that is what I forgot. I was so focused on this idea of how I could tell you guys how I love to support my podcast, how I love to support my TikToks and my music. And yes, of course, that has everything to do with it, but it also has to do about loving myself, because with the self-love that I'm discovering, that I'm having, that I'm building, this relationship I'm building with myself allows me to have a better, stronger connection with being my own biggest fan, because I know my worth. I know how much I love myself. So I know everything I make will have all that. It'll resemble the self-love, the biggest fan, all the confidence that I have. It resembles that in what I'm saying, in my content, in my music, in the TikToks. It's there. That energy is there. Why? Because I support who I am. I love what I do. I love myself. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what being your biggest fan and loving yourself is all about. Because once you discover the self-love and discover that inner child and help find your way back to them and help heal them in any way that they need help to be healed, is what helps you get closer to being your own biggest fan and the self-love. And that, I feel like that is the biggest takeaway that I've been trying to find again with this whole idea of being your biggest fan. And I don't know why it's been so hard to do it in this episode, and I do apologize. And maybe it's because I didn't 100% fully feel up to recording the podcast today. But however, it is Sunday. I release them on Wednesday. I didn't want to wait any longer, and I'm already busy on Monday, so that puts Monday out of the bit. And now Tuesday, oh my god, then I upload on Wednesday, so then I'd have to record, edit, re-listen to the entire thing, and then upload it all in one day. And that, my friends, is not for me. That is not for me. So yeah, maybe from now on, now I will learn that I do 100% have to be in the mood, in the zone for the podcast. And of course, I was up for it today. I was like, okay, I gotta record the podcast. I know what I'm gonna talk about. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a vibe. But then we had the technical difficulties. And then I had to spend all day outside of my room because my mom had washed my carpets, which thank you, mother, for that. But anyways, yes. Of course, but yeah, so I had that. So I guess the reason why I feel so chaotic and feel like the energy is off in my room is because I didn't get to spend the day in it. I kind of came in here just to do the podcast. So the energy, the vibrations, the self-love, the self-care, everything, it just wasn't in the air the way it normally is when I do a podcast. Because whenever I set up the podcast, and I did the same routine for this podcast. Whenever I set up my podcast, I always put on some jams to help get me in the mood, and I just vibe while I set up. And then I go into the podcast, and it's a great time. We're all vibing, we're all having a good time. But today, for whatever reason, that just was not happening. And it was really upsetting. It's kind of frustrating, to be honest. But now I'm learning that, hey, the only way I could do this is if I'm 100% full-heartedly into the podcast. And again, that has to do with being your biggest fan. Because if you don't want to do something, it's just not going to come out the way you want it to. It's not going to be as great. It's not going to have that same energy, the same vibes if you are forcing yourself to do something, which is why, like I said, I only want this podcast to happen organically. I only want everything to feel natural. I don't want anything to ever feel forced. And I do apologize if this podcast does feel forced, if it is very chaotic. I do very much apologize. And now I know. Now T Money knows that, hey, T Money, unless you're 100% feeling it, unless your whole heart is in this game, don't do it. Don't record. And that's the lesson learned, folks. That is the lesson learned, as well as I'm hoping that the whole point of being your biggest fan, that point, I hope that also came across to you guys as well. Because I do. I love myself. I support everything I do. And honestly, it's honestly helped me a lot with everything I do, being my own biggest fan, because I guess I kind of always lacked a little bit of confidence when I was younger, but as I grew older and started to be my own biggest fan, because if I'm being honest, that's really how the self-love started. If I'm going to be honest, the journey there, well, I'm a little bit, but you know what I mean. Go, maybe that'll be another episode. Anyways, yeah, the whole being my own biggest fan is what helped me build up my confidence, because I'm like, okay, I know I'm good at guitar, I know I could sing, but like, if I just had more confidence, everyone would probably, watch or something, but no. Then I learned, hey, you have to support yourself. You have to be your own biggest fan. And once I learned that, and once I started being my own biggest fan, once I started listening to my own music, once I started supporting myself with the love and the care and the kindness and the confidence that I know I deserve and need, everything else just followed into place. My music got better, my confidence got better, everything just happened more naturally, more organically. You could feel everything better in what I did. You could tell my whole heart was in it. It wasn't just something that I was doing just to do. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that when your heart's not in something that you're doing, especially when it's something like the arts, we could 100% tell. Because if your whole heart isn't in what you're doing, it's not gonna be the level of greatness that you want. And that's because it wasn't something that you were a fan of to begin with. You weren't 100% a fan of your work. And that's the struggle of being an artist, But again, if you do learn the importance of being your own biggest fan, though, that then could help that can counteract the whole, well, I don't really like what I'm doing, but I'm gonna put it out there anyways because maybe someone will. No, you gotta learn to love what you create. You gotta be happy with what you have, and that's what being my own biggest fan has taught me, is learning to appreciate the things I have, the gifts I have, the way I have come so far with my music, with the podcast, with everything. I'm very proud, and that's a very big thing to do. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes, being proud of yourself is another thing that has to do with being your own biggest fan, because being a fan has to do with enjoying and loving and being proud of the work that your favorite band or your favorite artist or TikToker or YouTuber, whatever, being a fan of what they create. Because I know several people, and as an example, since I said YouTubers, when you're subscribed to a YouTuber and you subscribe to them because you love their content, you love the authenticity that they have, and then it's usually when they start off as like a small channel, and then as they grow up and they get bigger into like the millions and all the subscribers and stuff, they kind of start to lose that authenticity because of the fame, because all that stuff, they lost the humbleness they had. They aren't as grounded anymore. And by being your own biggest fan, I feel like it helps you. At least it has helped me to stay grounded, to stay humble, to know that yes, even though things are finally taking off, I still know where I came from. I still know the struggles, the hard work, the time, the effort, the strength it took to get to where I'm at, because I am my own biggest fan, because I am constantly reminding myself that, hey, yes, you're finally where you wanted to be in life, but you gotta remember all the little things, all the hard work, everything that it took to get you there. And by being your own biggest fan, that is how I'm staying grounded. That is how I'm staying humble. That is how I'm trying to prevent fame or anything to corrupt my mind. I'm protecting myself. I'm protecting my energy so that when things arise, when I'm finally at my prime, when I'm the highest of highest T-money, when I am just blooming, when I am in full blossom, I will still be 100% grounded. I will still be there for myself. Whatever the chaos that may happen, I will still have myself. And that's so important. And because I am my own biggest fan, I will forever remember that. And that's really is how I am my own biggest fan. And I know that may sound kind of confusing to you, but I hope in some way what I said, I somehow hope this entire podcast has resonated with you in some way, and that you somehow understand what I mean about the importance of being your own biggest fan. Just because of how crazy I feel like this episode has been. It's just been so wild, been so crazy, been kind of like all over the place, So I meant to say I hope that this podcast does resonate with you some way, that you do somehow through the chaos understand what I mean when I say I am my own biggest fan, and how important it is to be your own biggest fan. Because I don't want to say it again. I don't want to say it again. I'm not going to say it again. Yeah, I'm not going to say it again. I'm not. We're just going to pretend I didn't even start anything for that last sentence. Anyways, yes, I think I lost whatever energy, whatever message was being channeled there, because for a second I totally was on page. I totally knew exactly what I was talking about, and then it got lost. So I guess that's really all I had to say about being your own biggest fan. I do genuinely hope through my chaos that you understand what I mean, and you understand how I am my own biggest fan, how I care and support for myself. And I will forever do that, because it's something that I'll always have with me. It's a strength. It is. It's not a weakness. It's a strength. Being your own biggest fan, 100% in my eyes, will always be a strength, because I love what I do. I love what I create. I love this podcast, even though, yes, I feel like this episode is very chaotic and may not make no sense at all. I still, when I go to listen to it, will 100% love this episode. I guarantee you, when I listen to this again or when I'm editing it, I'll probably be like, wow, I thought it was so crazy and so chaotic, but no, it was like perfect. It was it was exactly what I needed. And who knows, maybe this chaotic energy, this I don't even know if it's chaotic energy any at this point. Maybe this episode is what you needed to hear. Or maybe it's what someone else needs to hear. And that's the thing. That's why I do it. It's because yes, it is absolutely for me, but it is also for other people to learn, to grow, to better themselves as well. So I do genuinely hope this podcast and my message did come across in some way, shape, or form, and you understand what I was trying to do and what I was trying to say. But I don't know. I guess today I is just a little off for me, and I don't have time to really push off to do the podcast. I really do wish I would have done it yesterday, but you live and you learn, am I right, folks? But yeah, that's genuinely, I think that's all I have to say about being your own biggest fan, and about how I am my own biggest fan is that this entire podcast, I don't want to repeat it again. Just because I feel like I've said being my own biggest fan so many times that it's okay. So until next time, guys, this is T Money saying live your life because you're the only one who get it. All right, bye.